transcended beyond the lifted veil, and can now easily recognize how minuscule our existence in Mendocino really was.
We were a contained little box of earthly ignorances, dreaming up superficial storylines of portals and positive mechanics, selling transformation like it was a product on an infomercial.
And yet simultaneously, what happened on that day, in that dining room, inside our family's home, has caused ripples to converge like tidal waves throughout a rapidly destabilizing multiverse. It is crystal clear to me now.
In this eternal moment,
The story has only begun, and we were merely the prelude.
DIY culture kind of saved my life.
I feel like that invigorates the city.
It gives artists a chance to contribute to the community.
It is so important that we have artists and ideas and these think tanks where our community can really come together.
DIY spaces don't have a consistent revenue stream, and they usually don't have the bandwidth to get up to these codes.
In 2016, there was a fire at a DIY art space called Ghost Ship.
I remember seeing other venues starting to get shut down. So we did like a little town hall style meeting.
This is your community. Keep it going.
Instead of telling us, you can't do this, it's not safe, help us make this safe.
Our goal is to give over $250,000 to DIY art spaces across the country, but we need your help to get there.
Meow Wolf is putting up the first $100,000 to help reach our $250,000 goal. Join our movement today by contributing at meowwolf.com/DIY.
There's really no such thing as too much bling.
Going dark!
Quack.
Hello world! Welcome back to Meow Wolf Live. This is a very special edition of Wolf Watching. It is day 3 of Kaleidoscape, the What Went Into It extravaganza. And I'm here with...
Ben Wright.
Brian Mayhall.
What? And you guys are on what team? The best team?
Sound team.
Sound team! Yes. And so we didn't get to include all the work that you did on Kaleidoscape in our giant 2-day retrospective. So we're diving in on just all the work that you guys did.
Awesome.
So what do you do on this sound team thing I hear of?
Yeah, so my title is the creative lead on the sound team, and that just means that I'm in all the meetings, kind of catching all the intention from the artists as projects develop and distilling that into actionable ways to make things sound cool.
Right, so that means some emailing?
Yep.
Coordination of content, listening, caring.
Totally. Yes, like a lot of brainstorming in the meetings, coming up with cool ideas, not only about how things might sound and feel, but like how they might interact with users, and you know, what kind of dynamics they might have, what kind of narrative arc they might have through a space.
And some composition as well.
Oh yeah, totally. Yes, I mostly do that. after hours,
right.
you know, when the meetings
and
are
I don't
all
want to
over
call
and done.
composition low level, but
Yeah.
it is when there's high level. It's kind of the meat.
It's
and
like,
potatoes.
yes, exactly. All the logistics kind of take the precedence in the course of my day.
And to be clear, you would never cut out content because you're that kind of.
Yeah, that's where my heart is.
Yeah,
you know,
stuff,
yeah.
I can't. And so, what do you do mostly?
I do sound design.
Awesome.
So Ben goes to all the meetings and then tells me all the things that need to be done.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
All the bleeps and bloops and music and stuff like that. Me and Ben and Paul and Matt, we all do all that sort of stuff.
And
is the microphone off?
No, it's oh no, wait. You like this? Somehow it got muted. Just checking out the backside of sound team in the house. Mic's not on. So really quick to unpack like the word sound design. People, in games and television and in exhibits, there is a difference between like the composition and the music that is playing in an environment, and then the sound design, which is the sound that's either like the Foley that's in the background to make it sound like a jungle, but not the beats.
Right.
And then bleeps and bloops, so sound effects from various.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's all of that. I mean, my job title is sound designer, but like on a project like Kaleidoscape, we did get to write a lot of music, so that was super fun. You know,
That's
like
great.
love doing the Foley stuff, the sound effects, and then to have a project like this where Ben comes back from a meeting and says, write a bunch of really fun music, and then go. And so we just like cranked out a bunch of tunes, and that was super fun to get to work on that.
And then also, which we'll get into more, we'll actually show you how this process works. But when you are laying sound design over composition and music, it's kind of like laying out an outfit. You actually play every sound. You put it on top of the music.
Yeah,
and you're
you got
like,
it.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Or, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, accessorizing.
Yes,
Sure.
accessorizing.
Yeah.
Okay. So explain, like, so these guys come into a room and they're like, sound team, we're doing a dark ride.
Yep.
How does that make you feel?
So good. I mean,
great.
you know, we love just the immediacy of the dark ride project. Like, you know, we're in the midst of these long form endeavors.
2 to 5 years.
Yes, totally. You got it with Denver and Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So to have something with a quick turnaround, run by like some hotshot creative leaders of the company.
You trust and are
exactly,
excited to fulfill their vision sonically.
Totally. It was just so fun to sink our teeth in, and like right from the get-go, it was like, we're moving, we're doing this. Like the planning phase was minuscule compared to what we're doing for the larger scale exhibitions.
And when you work with Matt, who I assume was your point person for like sonic description.
And Emily, sure. Yeah.
And Emily, okay, both of them who led both of our days, Monday and Wednesday last week respectively. So how do they come at you? They give you some general feels, and then your freedom ensues from there, and you iterate based on how close that got to what they were thinking.
Yeah, sure. They're both really open, and we've worked with them enough that I think there's a really good dynamic and a trust that's built over the years.
Mind
with that.
reading can
Yeah,
go down?
totally.
Okay,
So like I don't remember a lot of iteration on the concept in advance. I feel like we were sort of given like, hey, this should be fun. It's a short ride. Let's like pack a lot of action into this. It should be up tempo and colorful. You know, I'm not remembering a lot of direction in advance of actually putting the pen to the paper. And then once we started drafting, then we were bouncing those ideas off of Emily and Matt in a pretty iterative fashion.
And they're open, but they also know what they like. You know, they both have a lot of experience with music.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool, like, in discussions with them, they had lots of great vocabulary for giving us feedback. And to help us develop the material.
And you didn't go down endlessly the wrong path.
No, far from it. Far from it. Totally.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, Chris, we have a slide of our zones. Would you take us to the zones, so the humans that didn't see day 1 and day 2? So here's the zonage. It's all over the place. So this is the dark ride, and you come in here, and zone 0 is where you're in Q dot, and ML GAM tells you, shut up and ride. And then you go into zone 1 and you wrap around to 2 and 3 and so on and so forth. And everyone has its own artistic environment, sculptural, all these things. And you guys were capturing those moods.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
You would make such a good weatherman, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
we have children coming in frequently through So I brought this up though because, am I correct in saying that these carts right here, they move on a little ticking system, and they move about a minute per something, like foot?
The whole ride's 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so short.
It's so fast.
Holy smokes. Okay, so So if it's all 2.5 minutes, how long is each section? We're going to divide that by 8. Some are longer than others. You're looking about 15, 30
Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably in zone 0 here, you know, when you round this corner into zone 1, that's probably like 3 seconds.
Wow.
And then you're in zone 1 for maybe total of 7 or 8 seconds.
Okay. And I was talking to Brian earlier.
Yeah.
Zone 0 is like a drone, an ambient drone.
Well, zone 0 is kind of like an industrial soundscape. It's
Sound
like
design.
clanking. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
totally. Yeah. So
You're
like
going into the machine.
Exactly.
The
Yeah, yeah. And zone 1 is like a blast of fog and purple light and this kind of white noisy pulsing drone with angelic icing on top.
And then zone 2 is our first music, right?
Yeah,
Right, that's
totally.
Okay, that's where we drop it on.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
That's where the egg cracks.
Totally.
And the beat happens.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
awesome.
And like as we're talking about this, it reminds me of some of the conversations we were having with Emily and Matt, where like the thought was like that these zones are real distinct. Like you can have these like sort of hard transitions from one zone to the next.
Yeah, did
But
that work?
No, of course
I
not.
didn't think so. Yeah.
You know, you look at this and you come through this door here into zone 1,
Yeah.
and like already you're like wide open to this area right here.
Oh.
So like the idea was that the egg cracks and the beat drops right in that moment. But the way that the timing of the cars works, you can't have a single car experience.
This
like,
egg doesn't care.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
so there are breaker beams. We learned all
yes,
about that.
totally. Right.
So what portions, correct me where I'm probably wrong, sometimes breaker beams are starting music to play, or is the music always looping as you roll into it?
The music is looping as you roll into it. And
section to
that
section,
is because there's moments where the cars are sort of backed
Pausing?
up. Yeah, exactly. So like you can't have the song start and then there's a car like 10 feet behind you that's also going to make the song start.
So basically you had to make a conscious decision that for the user, the rider in the
Yeah.
car, they're not going to get this perfectly unique cue
Yeah.
to their POV,
Yeah.
but they are going to get the cue, get the feels as you go from zone to zone.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
Yeah, we had a few different approaches for that, right? So like in zone 2, it's all different loops that are playing in different speakers. So like you have the drum loop that's playing in all the speakers, and then the bass line's playing in the second set of speakers, and the synth in the third, and so on.
Yeah.
So you kind of get like a bit of form just
Living
by
mix.
passing. Yeah, a living
Yes.
mix. So just by
Cool.
passing through, you get the form. And then in other zones, well, when Paul comes on, he can talk about the way he did zone 4 and 5. That
Different
was
orientation.
different sort of
Cool.
idea.
There's
Yeah.
a number of different formats, at least 3 that I can think of
Yeah. That
is
as to
fantastic.
how we put the sound in the speakers.
That is
And specifically in that zone 1 into 2, that was like when I was up there on site, I really massaged that particular transition
Right.
to like try to get the beat like so that when you round the corner, you're like in the groove.
Right.
And it took a lot of work, just like
Sure.
in the iPad mixer, and just
Yeah.
And so I want to get a little thick here for a second.
Yeah.
First, how many speakers are in this adventure?
I wish I
This
knew
2.5
exactly,
minutes.
but
We
there's
gonna say
probably 50.
50
Yeah, about
speakers.
50. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and more speakers in the larger zones.
Yeah, sure, right. Like the hyperspace tunnel
Okay.
had 12 for the spatial system in there.
Okay.
Wow. But yeah, average of probably 6-ish per zone.
Okay,
and that's not including the ground speakers with the targeted sounds.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
So when you get to that as well, the sound design and those targeted sounds, do those use breaker beams as well, or all conglomeratrons to point and register?
Yeah,
okay.
you got it.
All right, and those sounds are largely attached to the actuated elements of this ride.
Yeah,
correct?
totally. Not
Exactly,
exclusively, but
right.
mostly.
There's
yes.
some other
Yeah,
payoffs that
totally.
you experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so now even denser still, I know a lot of the composition and sound effects were designed and manipulated and printed out of Ableton.
Yeah, totally.
Now, the world where these things play endlessly, that is not what Ableton does in this universe.
Right.
So are you using Max to trigger?
We're actually implementing this new-ish system called QSys that's developed by QSC. And it's
Shout out.
Yeah, I know.
QSC.
Serious shout out. They've been so cool to work with. We're super grateful for the technology. But it's basically like a mainframe computer that's called a core that lives in the tech closet, and that streams all the audio out to the various zones.
Right, to the specific speakers. Like you could dial in exactly which loop or which sound you want going to different speakers through the core.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Ben was doing all that work on site up there.
Yeah, and it comes down to like a little iPad app that's
a mixer.
Yeah, it's not unlike a DAW really. It doesn't have all that functionality because it's really made for sort of a commercial installation.
And then I'm assuming then that as opposed to Macs, where like code, you'd be relying on code in this homemade structure to trigger those sound effects. This is more they're being triggered like sampler sounds or something.
So the triggered sounds actually are served in a different format.
Do tell.
Yeah.
Do tell.
Right, these little guys that were actually on site at Elitch already, called mini SAMs, and so these were like placed locally in various little tech nooks throughout the ride, and those have little built-in amplifiers and little SD cards. So you load those samples onto those SD cards,
Shit me not.
and like put them in the right place to respond to the right trigger. Which that was a whole dance in and of itself, getting all the right files coming out of the right speakers.
Right. So that did involve a lot of coding. So shout out to Danny.
Yes, totally.
For
Danny
doing all the. Danny did
Yeah.
all the coding for all this triggered sound effects like
yes,
that.
exactly.
Amazing work.
Yeah. So all that was local, and that was kind of an interesting dynamic too, because where the QSC system is made to play things back in sync, no problem. So we had all these stems, and you just hit go, and they all start at the same time, and they're all in sync if the loops were cut, right? You know,
sure.
And so the mini SAMs weren't about to respond to that clock information. So so when Matt was like, "Hey, can we like have this target trigger a beat?" In the midst of it was like that's not really an option. The way we had it laid out, it was an okay limitation to work with because mostly all these sound effects just needed to be one shots and over. They didn't need to be grooves or layers on top of the piece. If we had our druthers, everything would have been QSC because QSC can respond to OSC. So we could have had it all networked and going back to the tech closet, but that's just not the way the wiring was set up in the ride. We were doing this on a budget and a timeline, and so we had to kind of work with what was there.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Makes perfect sense. Okay, so we have a napkin diagram on your. Chris, can you take us to our HDMI? Oh, look at that! So what is this? This is some kind of like.
Isn't that good? I know.
Harebrained. That's the dark ride on a napkin with a green Sharpie.
Yeah, and it's a good segue out of the little microcontroller conversation because this spells out exactly where. The little microcontrollers lived and which local elements they served. So like, where are we? It's hard to tell where we are.
So that's
this Neon Sun area, Neon Sunrise, had like a number of different targets that when you hit them, the mountains rise and
you're right.
The sun rises on a break beam too. So in that. You know, we have a sound effect for each of these mountains rising, and those need to get loaded onto this C1 microcontroller and named properly for the proper element. And then when you hit them, they make the sound. And same goes for all these other little microcontrollers. And you can see how many elements and how many microcontrollers there were, and this probably doesn't even represent all of them.
Doesn't look like all of them.
No, and this is reminding me as the sound person as well. When I did the room that I did at House of Eternal Return, I have this session that I show everyone in Ableton where the sound effects are great, everything works, the beats are all triggering, and it takes months to get that to happen in a room.
Oh, totally.
Oh, yeah.
I know the implementation is.
You just finally get to what you had on day one.
Right.
In this room, and it took Danny's genius and all this other shit, 55 speakers.
Exactly.
QSys. Yeah, that's amazing.
And I feel like this whole diagram, you know, it looks like napkin, and because it is, and like Danny scrawled this out, like I was probably in between two meetings, and like, hey, like I can't quite grok this out of the spreadsheet because we have all this like information listing the different controllers and like even the creative
doesn't make sense.
Thought, and it just like it didn't distill into this map until I like stopped by Danny's desk and he was like just scribbled it out in 2 minutes and I snapped a picture of it. So it's kind of a funny example. We don't usually work like
totally,
this messy, but
no, and you're doing micro work and he had the macro mind.
Totally.
And that's sort of we can tell if you watch all 3 days that persisted throughout.
Sure.
Danny was one of the people that was like zoom out. Which is really cool. Brain big enough. So Chris, if you take us to the zone 1, zones, I guess we got ML Gam. We have our zone, our beautiful And they'll get, and that is so. This is the initial zone where you're hearing tutorial, and I assume you guys did sound design that went in that tutorial video. Yeah. So that was some composition and VO.
That was Brian. Yeah, it was Brian.
Yeah, it was mostly just vocal processing. Right. Emily Montoya had written a script, and she recorded it, and so I was like layering all these different pitches of her voice in there to make it sound
female. With Nate as well.
Yeah, with Nate in there. And so all of them had like 4 or 5 different layers of pitched up or pitched down voices that were sort of coming and going throughout the script, which is hilarious if you've never heard it.
It is really cool.
It's really funny.
I did hear it.
Yeah, so it's brilliant. And that was a lot of fun to work on, just to play with somebody's voice like that and make it sound weird and robotic and alien.
And match the tone of this creature.
Yeah.
And all that. Yeah.
And actually to layer Nate's voice and Emily's voice was difficult too, because they didn't say it at the same time. So I had to edit all the things, and there's lots of like micro editing to.
VO editing is its own special circle of hell within sound design.
It's so true.
Yeah, it is. That's like a whole person's job in the real world.
Right. But what poor sap is.
And also let it be known there's an art to it. There's an art to recording VO that makes you not redo your. It's a whole and a half. Yeah. So take us to the zone. Shout out to everyone recording VO or doing VO right now. This is VO. Anyway, my bad. So this is the egg, and this is the egg opening, and it's so beautiful. And so is this, as we go into the mountain zone, is that where this first composition is?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
So take us through to our mountains, Chris. And that egg opens, and you see a pointless representation of time and space. And origin of all things, and then it explodes into a projection map geodesic landscape that becomes what you're seeing right now. And this is
and like you saying all that is like reminding me of the conversations that we had with Matt and Emily, where it's like, yes, this is a really fun, awesome concept. Like so simple, not a whole lot of like, story behind it. Just like this egg cracks open, the universe begins, and then it all gets sucked back into the egg again at the end.
Yep.
Brilliant.
And new environment. And your influences that they're asking you to think about are not like it's a Western.
Right.
So I need a guitar. Like they're like, it's geodesic mind splash.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, all right, that's probably got a hi-hat. a synthesizer and there's something.
Totally.
Okay, so, and we have a bit of music that you were going to play.
Sure.
And this is the composition, and this is always looping?
This is looping in zone 2, and so this arrangement is really short. It's about 1.5 minutes, because I think it only takes you like, 20 seconds to get through that zone.
Oh, so there's a progression that you don't hear unless you ride twice.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah. Well, no, it's sort of, I tried to just emulate what it would feel like to go through the zone in this arrangement, but it doesn't quite,
Right, no matter where you are in that feeling, you are going through this zone as a listener.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning we did keep the loops short, so you don't really miss anything. You pretty much get all the elements all at once, which is it was an unusual task for us, because usually in Meow Wolf exhibitions we're trying to create an arc and really give people a sense that the soundscape is evolving, over 30-second cycles or whatever, and this was all of it.
Well, and you're giving them in a Meow Wolf exhibit. We talked about this with Matt and Emily. The big privilege of this was that it's a linear experience that is mapped, and you can progress people through it.
Totally.
However, sonically, when you can't perfectly sync everything, it means you actually don't have the ability to articulate a progression musically like you would, and you don't have the time to make this 10-minute loop to hang out in a forest.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not like a big masterpiece that you can write, because you only have 10 seconds to be in each little zone, and then you're on to the next idea, next sound environment.
You gotta FedEx that shit.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely.
This is what it feels like to listen to this.
Right. So
it made it kind of excruciating to work on a little bit, on site, especially just because they're just looping. 35 seconds. So when you have everything up, it is up and on and
maximal.
There's no escape.
And then there's poor Sophia's painting. And she's like, this beat over?
No, it's never over.
Turn into
Sophia,
reggae yet?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's so great.
And it's always a good test to see how your coworkers, how much they're driven insane by what you're doing.
Right.
And
how quickly they're driven
everybody's
insane.
pretty cool with it. And honestly, the global stuff, we had the iPad control over, so we could just knock that out. But the break beams were really rough because it was harder to turn those off. Like you'd have to go into the closets and like turn off the microcontrollers, and then
somebody would walk through.
Yeah. But so like every time somebody walks through with a ladder or a bucket or like a pencil or whatever, it triggers the whole sequence of like this Larry and Curly.
They gotta jump. It's like hopscotch.
Yeah, we were totally doing that, like trying to like step over the big.
Hear it again. Well, I'd love to hear. Will you play us?
Sure. So, all right, there it is. There's the first beat as you're coming around the corner.
Oh, right.
And then, this piece was I remember Matt was sort of like, think like video game, like vaporwave.
Right.
Big thing in the Meow Wolf
Vapor
world.
game.
Yeah, vapor game. And so just try to, there's some vocals in there through a vocoder. And
awesome. And then this is, for those of you at home that don't know, this is Ableton Live.
Yeah.
And these are all his tracks. I see you're using Reactor, which is a synthesizer.
Yeah, a lot of Reactor stuff. They all sound so great. And like I was saying, we were just like trying to crank through this material. So just kind of grabbing a Reactor synth and finding a cool sound really quick and moving on to the next idea.
And how many times did you, let's say this is the final composition mix, how many times did you iterate this based on once you started putting shit in the room?
Like on the implementation?
Yeah.
Well, we had the stems at that point.
Right, so I had burned all the loops for Ben to mix on location. We stayed in Santa Fe, and he had all the stems at his hand, so he can mix it exactly how he wanted. Totally. And there was a couple of like optional stems that would say, what if I put it in this speaker? Like when we were burning the stems, turn it down a little bit. When we were burning the stems, we would also we would name them according to the speaker location.
Right.
So naming conventions. Keep it easy. Shout out to naming conventions.
Big time.
Making crazy people sane on a daily basis.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's wow, so cool. So there you have it.
And so there's very little iteration necessary because of the stem approach. It was like, Brian put the sounds in the right speakers by naming them well.
Right.
And then like when I was up there, it was just a matter of massaging, because that was a particularly sensitive transition from like the space and the fog into that first beat. So I did spend a lot of time just sort of like fine tuning.
So the drums are mostly in those. So no matter where it is in the sequence, you're kind of just hearing those drums.
Right.
Love it.
Exactly,
working with what you got. That is so cool. Yeah. Oh, wow. So Chris, will you show us the next zone, zone 3, and this is where things become primordia. Oh, this is so beautiful. And so you have this geodesic vapor game beat breaking apart into what was kind of the creative direction for this area?
This is like the swamp area next, right? Or primordial planet. So I don't remember any like sort of creative notes on that. We were just kind of grab bagging ideas.
Yeah, honestly, like we cast the net pretty wide, and like Brian already mentioned, it was sort of just like, hey, let's just write a bunch of
shit.
Totally.
See what matches. Laying out the outfit. Accessorize. Accessorize. Okay.
Yeah, and we weren't just totally shooting in the dark at that point either. There was like already pretty healthy concept imagery and like
palette.
Yeah, exactly.
What about key? What'd you guys do about key?
Yeah, white keys, right?
Yeah, all white keys.
White keys.
Totally.
Yeah. Cool.
That's kind of our move. Yeah.
Good enough for hockey.
Yeah.
So let's sit in the room. Right. Okay. All right. Awesome. So and then now we're gonna go over to Ben's computer and we're gonna see. This is a very important, this is sort of what I was talking about when I worked in my House of Eternal Return room. This is a master session where you keep all the stems and finished music organized as well as sound effects, and this is where you accessorize.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to play a loop using the clip launch functionality of Ableton.
You got it.
And then play sound effects over it. So do you have some primordia for us?
I think so. Let's see.
Look at you.
It's a big session.
Okay, so here's
Kids at home do not
I know this is too
direct
many tracks.
content for an exhibit, or you're going to be doing
exactly.
This is a spreadsheet of sound.
Definitely,
yeah. Do I need to select an audio interface?
Oh yeah, just send it out of your.
Here we just.
Sorry. No, we got you on headphones. Sound team.
There we go.
Fail. Sound team. Fail. Let's move you over here, Ben.
Sure.
Here, I'll get this out of the way.
Here we go.
Sound team. In the house. What's it sound like at the top of the ladder? Sounds good. There we go.
Cool, there it is. So this is the backdrop for the swamp sound, which I think came out great. This is Brian's piece also.
That's adorable.
I love the like marimba part. Makes it so playful and like a little like Lion King-y, but in a good way.
In a good way, thanks.
Not that bad Lion King. There's so much about Lion Prince.
Can we
wow,
edit
that's cool.
that
And then like play me a sound effect because I know in this zone, what can you shoot? You can shoot. Oh, this is where the geodesic monster, the woke lizard is. The cat.
Totally, exactly.
The bird,
exactly.
bat,
this whole
butterfly,
sequence.
moth.
Bicycle face.
moth. Totally.
Damn.
And this was the
Can't be
classic.
Israeli.
This was the classic one that everybody who walked by tripped every single time, and it triggers like one thing after the next, like in the whole sequence. Which was also really tricky to get the timing of that just right. Like as you move by, this sound should be playing out of this speaker when this actuation
You don't want it all
happens.
firing behind you while someone else is triggering it after you. So will you? What is bicycle face?
Let's see. Katie's bird is right here. Right?
Yeah.
Do it again.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Paul
made that sound. Shout out to Paul.
Shout out to Paul, who we're gonna have up next with Matt Heddish.
And then there's a
coconut tree.
Yeah, coconut tree. And then here's a goblin. That's the little bat.
Oh, that's amazing.
Sitting on it.
Sounds just like my bats at home.
Yeah, right?
Is that the guy who eats the thing?
That's like when his hand comes up and
that's the woke lizard push out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that
Cat, that's what your brainchild. Emily, that's what Cat's brainchild, your brainchild sounds like.
Is that the sequence that people kept tripping over and over again?
Totally, it's hilarious,
Yeah, I like it now, but if you did this to me for like 10 hours.
And it's all of these in sequence, it's hilarious. You really started going loopy.
That's really great, yeah. Loopy, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Oh wow, what's that?
That's when that's when the creature
eats the fruit.
Wow, that's adorable. I can see it all in my head.
Right? Yeah. And so all of this was triggered on the break beam, right? Or no, some of that was some of these were some of them were conglomeratrons, but like the bird and the whole woke lizard thing, like that happens in sequence based just on the break beam. And then a lot of the other little bat sounds and creature sounds were on the conglomeratrons. Yeah.
So cool. The break beam, was that in like just one file that you had to put spaces in, or
nope, separate files.
Separate files
that all had to be timed out. Shout out to Danny. Yeah.
Danny, the secret sound person.
Yeah.
Behind every good sound team, there's someone far smarter who knows how to play that shit out of a building.
So true. True. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, so we're going to move on to zone, our next zone after Primordia, which is Chaos to Madness.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And Brian, we're going to swap you out for Paul.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being on, man. It's a pleasure getting your mic working, checking out your backside, hearing your beats.
Yeah, please. Do that anytime.
Yes. So, all right, this to me is like the Meow Wolf look exploding into what it's known for, which is maximalism.
Yeah, totally. So beautiful. I love all these pieces.
And this also, most of the characters are in this zone. Goldfish, Sandra's egg of joy, and then the puppeteer, the scary but still huggable.
You know what I was thinking might just be worth mentioning while we're waiting for Paul to get wired up is like the process with this whole global Ableton session was like, we had all the zone sound up, so everything's playing, it's all grooving, in sync and everything, and then we would go through each zone with this session with the art directors, Katie sometimes Katie,
so you're walking
Emily and
through,
Matt,
tripping break beams, holding this laptop.
You got it, with a little Bluetooth speaker on Matt's fanny pack, I think.
Oh man, I can't wait. I can't wait to talk all about that.
And so we would go through and trigger a sequence of sounds and have the art directors be like, yes.
Wow.
No thanks. This one, and with Katie specifically, we were like, she's like, can you make it sound more stretchy? And like,
oh, that's my favorite thing about sound design. When you get a note that's like, one time I worked in Nickelodeon, this lady sent me a note and it was like, can you make it more red?
Yeah, totally.
And that's when you say yes.
You just say
and you just go scream in a closet. Yeah, that's
I know. But Katie's great with that. She like always has good adjectives. But I was literally sitting there like dragging the warp markers around, putting different processes on the thing. Yeah, she's like sound designing with her.
Wow, that is so cool though.
He was like, I'm coming in for a second. Ben was like with his laptop, and he was down on his knee, and he had his other knee up, and he had his laptop on it balanced, and he was going like, and I was standing there with a Bluetooth speaker attached to my hip, and he was like going like, how's this? And she'd be like, maybe make it a little bit more like wobbly, and then he'd do something, and she'd be like, yeah, that's cool. What about like,
yeah, so great.
So
on
fun.
a dirty floor.
Yeah,
and that's content whispering at its finest. That's you and old girl, you and Katie have a connection.
Yep.
You know that when you are not using words, you are not misunderstanding one another.
Totally.
And you are using words that probably describe most of what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
That's really cool.
Totally, it's so fun.
It's the zone.
Yeah, that's
this
the
whole
zone.
bouncing
Yeah.
underneath it.
I wanted to have one of those like the cigarette girl cases.
Yeah, we were talking about those.
Yeah. There probably are things like that for laptops.
Yeah, cigarette guy too. I think the men did. Maybe
Fair
not
enough.
actually.
Yeah,
It was a sexist
For
word.
like the computer marching band.
Yeah.
Totally. So, look, we have a new human being up here.
Hey,
hi, Paul. How are you, man?
Yeah,
Welcome.
good. Thank you.
Ben, we are going to switch you out from that.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
The
Cool.
handsome fella
great.
who just
I
came
got
in
a
here
meeting
rapping.
actually. Is it cool?
Yeah, I bet you do. Get back to meetings, dude. Enough of this fun and talking about content. Thanks so much for coming.
That was a
Ben.
great
Yeah.
time, buddy. Pleasure, man. Yeah.
So, what do you do here at this Wolf?
I make the noises and the sounds
Also?
as well as composition.
Okay.
So sound design and composition, kind of like what Brian does.
Yep.
And then I also am lucky enough to get to step away from the computer sometimes and do sound fabrication.
You make some cool stuff that we can't tell people about, but TBD, this dude, cool things that make noise.
Yep, some instruments. I think I can say that much. Or we're going to make some
Can't run with that.
physical things that are instruments. But anyway,
Right.
for this project, I got to make lots of content and sounds. And like these guys said, we each made like 3 times as much content as the thing needed. And so this is a piece that I made that ended up in 2 of the zones, zone 4 and 5, when things get super maximal. Yo, Matt.
Hey.
Matt's here.
I'm here. I was already here.
Matt, so what do you do? Look at that. We can read sound content manager.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a confusing title.
It is. You do. So, and to be clear, you also are a composer. You make music. You are a lover of sound. And then manager like plays down how wired in you are to all aspects of this. We all are.
Yeah.
We all self-manage, but you actually coordinate a lot of the planning that went into this.
Yeah.
So speaker buying, let's be technical.
Nick did the speaker buying.
Nick did this. Nick Taylor did
but
the
I
speaker
started.
buying.
I
Shout
like
out Nick Taylor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Nick, for doing all the AV. Nick's our AV integrator. He did all that QSys stuff we're talking about. He spec'd and built that system.
Wow.
But I essentially did the project management on the project. But I also what I do at the company is like project manage and manage the team and help with whatever needs to happen. And I did some sound design for mostly for the conglomeratron stuff. But with this project, it kind of started with me going to the ride when it was still Ghost Blasters early on, and like walking through and counting speakers and checking that with the plans and thinking about what it was going to be like and trying to build a system that would work in this like grimy thing.
Yeah, so you're like Neil Armstrong. You come back from the moon and you're like, guys, it's like this. And you convey the future of everyone to them. Right.
Yep.
You got to ride Ghost Blasters 2 quite a few times.
I got to ride it a bunch of times.
Alone?
With other team people, but yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know,
I'm picturing you
at
like
nighttime. Oh, I was like, yeah.
One speaker.
Definitely. The Ghost Blasters thing was hilarious, just to talk about the same stuff we've been talking about. When we were walking through, you would be triggering these sounds. But unlike the sounds we made, they were like, look out, ghosts! Like every 5 minutes, and it would be like a scream and like some
oh God, I can't imagine.
ridiculous. And my favorite part of the whole thing was they had, I don't know who did this, but in Elitch they had tweaked the EQ for the master ride, and they'd just bumped the treble all the way up. So
the screams of joy.
Everything was like this FM synthesis, like old 80s style, like scary music, and it was just like piercing.
Awesome.
Like your ears.
Birds gotta hear it too.
It was like bells, but the high end of the bell was just as loud as it could possibly be. So,
and that is like some sound team stuff to go into like a department store or a dark ride and be like, wow, the highs are cranked.
Yeah, you noticed that.
That's when you're in deep. Yeah. Okay, so we have this composition from Paul. So you were saying this is meant to go in chaos to madness. So you were thinking about, here, really quick, we're gonna go.
Oh yeah, do the thing.
Yeah, watch me do this non-sound team magic. Blood-ow.
This is some Meow Wolf Live magic here
Meow
right
Wolf
now.
Live, knowing how to do my thing.
Bam!
Yeah, multiple display guy in the house. All right, so back to baseball. So you were thinking about, you made a bunch of pieces, and this one just actually fit when you laid it over the idea?
Yeah, and with help from Matt and Emily in deciding like what made sense. And this one actually spans 2 zones, which is cool. So this one piece got to really develop, as opposed to just being like a stemmed loop in one zone. It starts with, it really goes from like intro, first middle, second middle, outro. So it really got to develop. And so each little sub-zone within the zones, like these 2 speakers had the intro, and then as you move forward, it would have middle 1, and then as you move forward, it would have middle 2, and then zone 5 was just the outro, which is madness, as you would hear. Should I start this thing?
How many feet are, how many feet are between these speaker sets as I transition between these blends?
It really depended. In this zone, there were a lot of speakers, but like maybe 5-7 feet between speakers. But it also was, that's a little hard to call, because some of the break beam speakers would be up mounted next to the like global, what we're calling global audio speakers, so the sounds that Paul's talking about. This was a bigger, like the sound design in this space was longer than a lot of the other spaces.
Yeah,
I think it's like about 10 seconds a section.
Some long stuff.
Whoa, yeah.
So then when I have to add, like you had made this composition, everyone liked it, and then did you guys describe to each other that, well, what we probably got to do to get a beginning, middle, and end is mix static loops of an intro, a middle, and an outro. Did you guys talk about that before implementation, or did that dawn on you once you tried something else?
That was in the sound team studio where I sort of saw the layout and talked to Ben like, based on how this composition has a beginning, middle, and end, which a lot of them didn't, it's like, and the way that the speakers are laid out, I think this could work well in that format.
The cool thing about this zone that was different than Brian's, like the kind of Lion King zone, was this wasn't stemmed out in the same way. So when you're going through that zone, and you hear a sound, it's like coming from the speaker over there. Like the drums are over here, and there's like a percussion over here. And so it was kind of like this cool spatial mix by the cart, right?
That's Brian's,
And that was Brian's zone. In this zone, it was all just like kind of static bounced loops, and you would be progressing through the structure of the song. So it was a kind of a contrast, and you'll hear it if you take the ride, but it's kind of a contrast in the experience of space with the sound.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So here, play us your baby.
Sure. So this is the intro. You're like passing by some of the cool human-esque things, and then the beat drops, and you're going into this like super maximalist area, which Max is like Matt's more familiar with than I am.
It's pretty maximalist.
Yeah.
And then here we are. Lots of neato arpeggio coming from the FM8 synthesizer.
And that's going to be like middle. That's middle
this is
one.
like where we're really like cooking now.
Okay, and this you call this middle.
Yeah, this is like middle. Now we're like deep in the thick of it. Okay, here we're like at double time. So like for the first portion of the ride, we're like, oh, now we're at 170 BPMs, and it's.
Is that what this is?
Yeah, it is.
You can see it up in the corner.
It's really cooking, and then so yeah, we're here for a little while, and then as you see where it says end hyperspace there on my session, that's zone 5 where it transitions into total madness.
Right.
Yeah. Almost there. Hold your breath.
Get ready for
madness.
madness.
Oh my God! It's gonna get crazy. Yeah. Music.
When I go mad, that is exactly what it sounds like. That's so great. Wow, and then this is its own duration as you're in this zone.
Yeah, as what we call the geodecadent zone.
It's not long at all.
Right. 8 or 10 seconds.
Little room, maybe not even.
Not even.
I mean, it's like the geodecadent space was like
crazy.
It's like a tiny room. It's not much bigger than this room. So it's
funny
full
how
of stuff.
Right.
The other thing that you should think about with this, because this is chaos, there are like a ton of break beam sounds in this space. So when you enter this zone, you trigger a break beam, and that sound design we were talking about Ben doing on his knee happens pretty much right away.
Right.
And then you go into another space, and on one side is like the basketball hoops magoop, and a bunch of other stuff, a Fisher mole, I guess.
Fisher mole.
Mole.
And then on the other side of the egg and all that stuff you saw, there's a horse, there's all these things. So as you're going through, it's just like sound everywhere. And like,
what sounded the
if this wasn't mad enough, there's tons of other things happening on top of it.
And then you go into the geodecadent zone, and there aren't that many there's a spinning noise and there's some other stuff, but there's this cat box that falls. And that was one of the beams where everyone would walk through all the time. It was just like this boom, wah, thing like every 2 seconds. It was pretty crazy. But like, to work in there, I don't think you get the same experience riding it so quick, but to work in there was like, by the end of the day, you're about ready to murder somebody.
Well, and also too, truth be told, as a sound designer, when you're mixing 40 footstep sounds or this fake cricket environment all day, it actually is tiring. You get fatigue, and you sort of like got to put your headphones down and be like, crickets, more crickets. But that's the price you pay to have it actually, to put it on. And then after you do all that work, eventually you put it on and you're like, that sounds like crickets. And it is like set itself straight. Same thing with mixing and composition. So that was something I noticed with hearing this, is I was thinking of going past these speakers that are playing the intro and then a middle and then a second middle and then Crazy Town. You had to keep the composition relatively minimal until Crazy Town, right? So that you can not hear shoes in the dryer or be confused as you go through.
And that's sort of the magic of the QSys system as well, is that everything's synced. So you shouldn't ever really hear shoes in the dryer, just like how we do at the House of Eternal Return, that all these different zones are actually beating at the same time. So even if you do hear the next zone, it's grooving with what you hear. So in the case of this, you like hear that full 170 BPM, that full 170 BPM groove up there before you get to it, but it's synced up with what you're hearing in the slow sort of groovy
that has to
intro.
Be interesting in the space, and add to what you were talking about with the difference between how music was arranged in the spatialized speakers versus this progression, linear tracking.
There's another thing about the space that was challenging, but is great that we designed this way, is that there's no isolation, right? You can hear, I mean, we mixed to try to keep it less crazy, but you can hear the tunnel in the like primordial zone. You can hear all the other sounds as you're going through. So it's not like we could have a washing machine kind of like effect anywhere, because it would be totally distracting the whole ride.
Yeah, and you see, like if you go and back and watch day 1 and day 2, we have these in-process shots, and you can see like the walls are really this high. So there's no sound. There's nothing stopping the Lion King from jumping over into the light tunnel or whatever it might be.
And as you see, like in the map of the dark ride with all the different zones, where you're really, and they used to be called pretzel dark rides. That's like one of the old nicknames for these things, because it's just basically a warehouse, and all these zones are just divided by paper thin walls. And so, like Matt was saying, zone 2 is right next to hyperspace zone 6. And so like really it's just on the other side of that, but you have to weave your way around all these little corners before you get to zone 6. So in that way it's kind of like foreshadowing, like an interesting story where you're like, ooh, what am I going to hear later?
And that's why having things synced in a relative key is
really important.
Make it aggravating or confusing. Makes it like,
I mean,
it's cacophonous, but it's not confusing, right?
It's not like,
or not
so
word. Disorienting.
Disorienting, And
was
it was pretty disorienting no matter what. But
is there baffling in there? Like, are the roofs at a point? Is there anything in there to keep sound in, or is it pretty much Crazy Town Gymnasium?
It's just a little warehouse. I mean, I don't know if this ever happened, but we were talking about hanging curtains in some spaces above the walls so that we could block some sound. But I left before that happened, if it ever happened. But
I've still not been there. I haven't ridden the ride yet, so I get to go check it out with my 3-year-old sometime this summer.
And you got to be like, you got to be like, that's my beat. Like Daddy's
check it out.
That's Daddy's.
That's so great. Chris, will you take us through to our next zone of the ride? And I don't know if we have a lot of the accompanying music. So this is Geo-Decadent.
That's where it's
so that's
craziest.
Madness.
That's
Madness. So we can hear that. That's sort of what that sounds like, as you can hear.
This is a small section that is really packed.
It's tiny and it's full of stuff.
It's like the inside of a tornado.
And kind of right behind. I'm disoriented here.
Oh, the cat box?
Yeah,
the cat box.
Yeah.
I don't think the cat box.
We don't. He's next to the knight, so we don't see
we don't
the
see
knight.
No, the knight. Yeah, we showed pictures
that's the
of
other side. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that is so cool. And then after this, we go into the light tunnel.
Hyperspace tunnel.
And what did you go for in the hyperspace tunnel? What was the sound sensibility for that?
That was actually Ben's soundscape, and so what's interesting about that is that was the one zone that couldn't be synced to QSys, so it's this more or less ambient space.
Wait, why?
Okay, so
I know it's going to be boring.
Here's
but I want to know.
Yeah, I'll talk tech a little, like technical a little bit. So most of the ride is on what's called a 70-volt system, which means that it uses one channel of audio to drive a bunch of speakers. So most of the global sound in all these spaces, we had like, not everything, because in Brian's zone we had different speakers, but there are some spaces where it's 70 volt.
Like a grocery store.
Like a grocery store or whatever. It's a good way to use fewer amps to do sound design for a space. The hyperspace tunnel was different in that we were fully going for a spatial audio experience in that. So when you went through it, the sound was moving around you. And we had a bunch of speakers. I think Ben said 12. It was originally 17, and things changed a bunch. But they were all around. It was being fed from the network.
Right.
But it has to trigger when the car goes in, right? So it's from a brake beam. That's like an instance where the brake beam sensor that was otherwise triggering stuff on the mini SAMs, which are like little computers with amps and everything in them, very bare bones, like 10-year-old Raspberry Pis or something, really robust.
Now needed to talk to QSYS.
Sent a message to QSYS to say start the lighting, start the video, start the audio. And then there were different brake beams in the tunnel to trigger the different sections of the audio and video and lighting. So that wasn't synced because the car has to start it. And the last section was also started that way.
And the cars aren't always coming at the exact same pace. Like they pace differently, so you can't be like timed with the rest of the ride perfectly.
All the cars move at slightly different speeds, which is a challenge. And also, like if you're loading and you have to load someone who needs more time to load into the ride, you gotta take more time to delay. Yeah. So that's a design challenge that we really had to think about.
And so how did that translate into the physical audio generation? Did you just not use beats? Did you, how did you compensate?
Right. There weren't beats,
Good, great.
So yeah, Ben used a sound design that was more just, I would say ambient, but it's like super maximal ambient. So like very full on, you might just have to go to the ride to check it out. But and it's very much synced with all the lighting, the way the spatial mix comes over you, and so this incredible lighting design that the tech team produced.
John Haas.
And Roz.
Shout out to Roz and John Haas and everybody who worked on it.
Incredible. This tunnel was,
it's amazing.
Magnificent.
Yeah, showstopper. And so Ben's sound design works really well with that, and there's no groove, so it can easily happen while all the other things are happening and not be out of sync.
And you're adding layers, I imagine. If we're getting this wall of sound faster through time and space, it's like as you go through these progressions, what's being cued off of QSYS with those break beams is just more.
I think that I didn't do the full technical on this, but the way that I understand it was like there were sections, more like we're in Paul's room.
Awesome.
So it was triggering one section, and then we were crossfading between different sections.
That makes sense.
Like you would go in, and it would be one thing, and would hit you with a kind of sound design that followed the lights, and then that would get more chaotic and more chaotic. It's a really quick zone, but still.
And did this magically come together where you had this sound and you put it in and you looked at the lights and you're like, oh shit, that's pretty much how these lights feel to me? Or did you go back and forth a bit?
I think there was back and forth. There was timing questions, and the nice thing about sound design is your brain will kind of compensate for the difference in timing and everything. But we really wanted to get this more directly synced to the lighting. So
like with OSC messages or data directly from the lights themselves. Did you have that option at all? Or
we didn't. I don't believe we ended up settling on that here. There was a bunch of back and forth on that, but it's challenging, and that would require a whole different set of hardware basically. So we put a mix in there that was Les, who's on our team, developed he's a Max wizard, and he developed a set of Max for Live plugins that we could mix with. And
Max is not a person. Max MSP is it's fantastic. It's sort of the godmother of Ableton.
It's like how you can make your own software. You can make your own hack software.
Your own DAW, and I think the layman's way to understand it is Max, whereas Ableton has channels and faders and solo buttons and effects. Max, you decide exactly what you want. I just want reverb. I just want one fader. I want to loop things, and you can pick and choose so that you're streamlining.
And you can build logic into it. So it's like a node-based programming language, if you're familiar with those at all. And you basically put a thing in there, and you say, this is a thing that triggers something. And you draw a line to another thing, and that's what it triggers. And
in theory, that would work great with break beams.
Getting
messages from lighting, and it usually does.
We didn't really use it in ride, because that requires we have a computer and a bunch of different things to inject the sound into the QSYS system and everything, and we just didn't go that deep here. But we did use it to mix and develop content.
And in lay people's terms, so like the lights are going whoosh over your head, and the sound is going whoosh over your head at the same
and
time.
spinning around and doing all sorts of stuff. That was a fun zone to work on because we were like in there with the iPad changing things, and I kept kicking the brake beam to trigger it.
Like MJ.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to see me lay an egg?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, hey.
Hey, here we are at the end of the road.
Wow.
So this is when all the madness, bicycles, chairs, and a ladder become formal shapes that then collapse back into singularity, which is the yolk, where chickens come from, and macaws, a lot of things, alligators,
dinosaurs,
Republicans. Anyway, so basically, when you get into this last section, what were the Sonics like? Is this like chill tent? The rave is over.
It's cool. It's like this. So this is another triggered section. When this is sitting, it's not playing audio if there's not a cart in there. When the cart comes through the door, it goes, and it has this whole like, sort of reminiscent of the tunnel you just came through, heavy sound thing that distorts and bit reduces until it hits the egg.
Awesome.
And the egg closes.
And there's a zoetrope?
Yeah, there's a zoetrope in the egg.
Were you coordinating? That's making some sounds, I imagine.
The egg makes sounds. It's actually like that's on the, I believe the egg sound was entirely on the conglomeratron, but it's like a reverse egg crack that I think Brian did the egg crack. And we reversed it on site, I think, and put it in the SAM. This room has the hardest to hit targets, so that's
really?
fun.
That guy?
That's actually the easiest one in the whole room, but it's still kind of hard to hit. But they're all like in these like warped bicycles and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
A challenge to anyone to hit all the targets.
Yeah.
It's really hard, from what I've heard.
I think no one is ever going to hear my sound design because I did
What did you
almost
do?
entirely sound design for the targets. Like we were there and we realized we didn't have the right or enough target sounds. Like they needed to be really short, punctuated, things that would cut through all the other audio. So Ben and I were sitting at the dining room table in the Airbnb like for 6 hours just churning out little booms and
that might
claps.
work, and then you walk through with the laptop and the Bluetooth.
And play them, trigger them by hand and live, and then Danny would put them on the SAMs, and then we would walk around with a gun. It was like Ghostbusters style. Like I had this battery pack strapped to my belt, and then we would be carrying this gun, and Danny would be like live programming on the tech cube thing, and like Ben would be listening
like a jug
and
band.
taking notes, and I would like shoot the thing, and then it would go, and we'd go, no, that's not loud enough, and we'd change it. But yeah, almost entirely all of my sound design is on like the hardest to hit targets. So that's cool.
Why are they trying to bury your stuff on the?
I mean, you know.
Well, there'll be some eagle eyes.
Yeah.
There's some dark ride snipers.
Yeah, some snipers.
Don't get
in
it twisted.
Conglomeratron masters.
There's your Easter egg. Try to find Matt's sound.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you,
because they all say, "I'm Matt Headich. I did this sound."
That's what they are. That's all I did. It's just a bunch of different versions of that.
That's why they put your shit in the back because you keep name dropping.
It's my ego.
I'm an egg. I'm Matt Headich. All right. So one other question I was thinking about when you were talking about all this is like, a lot of times when we do sound design for all this top secret stuff in Denver and Vegas, it's super hurry up and wait for our process because we iterate. So you guys had fun making compositions for was that a week of your life, a day?
This whole process, I'd say, was like 3 weeks where we got to crank, and that's even before Matt and Ben went up to Denver. So
you haven't been to Ghost Breakers. We're traveling back in time, 8 months.
I had gone, I think the first time I went was early summer. It was like the first trip that anyone took. So I went with like the whole crew. And I was the only sound team person there, and there was some infrastructure and creative direction, and all these people were there. We were walking through Ghost Blasters. So we had a concept of how everything would work, but not a concept of like what the ride was going to be.
We had to wait for creative direction to kind of like spell out the different zones and the progression of the story and like what each zone should feel like.
Yeah.
So you could accessorize.
That's right.
And smack things on top of other things, right?
And develop the tech systems too. Like the initial takeaway I had when we went there was that we didn't have a lot of budget, and we were just going to do everything with what they already had, which was like all these mini SAMs. And then we started looking at whether we could sync with them, and we couldn't, and they weren't that cheap if we needed to buy new ones that could sync. So we started to revise the plan, which allowed us to do the content the way that it was done.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shuffle, make do.
Yeah. There was a time when Ben and I were up there, like, plugging in a phone to the amps in the system and like crawling around in mouse poop, like listening to different speaker channels together and like calling each other and be like, is that coming out of that speaker or not? You know, trying to pick which speakers were dead and everything.
Wow,
yeah.
mouse poop.
That was before we did any sound design.
We got a question from David S. Miller. Do you loop waves or devices playing a MIDI and soft synths? So I think the answer to that is, as you saw with some of the sessions, writing in MIDI. Some maybe you commit to audio and you can see any in that session, right? And then it is waves.
It's all sample playback, so all wave files, everything
truncated to a beat, clocked, baked, and then I assume you were saying stems, but some of those stems were probably clumped, so you probably had a hi-hat and a kick drum on some stems, and that was discretionary based on iteration, based on feeling in the place.
And if someone doesn't know what stems are, it's basically the pieces of the track, right? So it could be your drum beat, it could be a loop of your drum beat, and then the layer of the bass is separate. So you have different control over the volume and positioning and stuff of each of those components of a track of music.
It's kind of remix terminology.
Yeah.
That's where you hear people be like, Khalid will be like, give me the stems, Beyonce. But we also say that. I say, I'll go into Matt and I'll be like, give me the stems, Beyonce.
And I'm like, thanks.
Let's go.
I'm Beyonce now.
Oh, we got another one too. Adam C. Sharp. Oh, he's a music person.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Love sound design. Do you use mostly soft synths or do you incorporate organic and found sounds as well?
We love both soft synths and organic and found sounds. I mean, we have to produce at such a quick rate sometimes that it's really helpful to have sampler packs as well as soft synths, but you know,
sound libraries, which you can manipulate to be unique and not the same door they sold you. Things like this.
Exactamundo, and we also love using samples and field recordings and microphones and Foley and all of it.
Processing sounds to approximate an otherworldly sound that resembles what you recorded.
This ride is a combination of all that stuff. Like the loading zone is like all this metal clanking sound, and Ben said that was a recording of the empty bowling alley where House of Eternal Return is. I don't know if they were throwing metal around. Or
we were throwing scraps of metal around years ago.
Sound guys.
Yep.
Give them a mic and a red button, and there you go. Throwing stuff around the room. That's
and
so
like
cool.
Brian always comes in and plays content, and we're like, that's a really cool sound. He's like, it's eggs frying in the frying pan, or like onions, or what, you know. So it's all that stuff. But then you guys use a lot of soft synths too.
Yeah, like half the creatures are me squealing into a microphone and then using this amazing plugin called Dehumanizer to just like mash and mangle and creature-ize my voice.
Used to make a lot Godzilla.
Yeah.
Dehumanizer wants to make most of your stuff Godzilla.
Sound like a
devil.
Jaguar or Godzilla or something like that. Yep.
I do shout out to sound designers though. I love that Jaguar sound from the 80s that's in all the movies.
Yeah, totally.
And the eagle, the two of them together.
Guys, I gotta run to a meeting. You guys want to keep chatting? I gotta run.
Oh well, I think we did it. Brian, come on up here. Yeah. Let's say bye to our friends and thank you guys for sharing everything you do. And this is how you make a Kaleidoscape sing.
Yeah.
Bye everybody.
Thank you guys for watching Wolf Watching. We'll be back very soon with more Meow Wolf Live.
Yeah.
Are your coworkers checked out? Having a hard time putting your heart and soul into meetings at the office? Let the Experience Tube help! It's soft, it's easy, it's fabric. Simply attach each end to a face and the tube immediately fills with experience. Guaranteed! Watch the office come to life as people actually connect with each other. Eliminate the chatter, dial down the stress, and crank up the color of experience. Encase your spaces in the stock for two faces. Get yours today, now available in a cornucopia of colors. A real-life product for real-life moments. Made in the USA, from fabric that's made in the USA, and gluten-free. It's also a scarf hat. This is not a joke. Act now and get not one, but two super cool, unlimited edition friendship bracelets. Log on now to experienceTube.com and get yours today. Just the tube of us. Brought to you by Meow Wolf.
Prefiero vivir ilusionado con ustedes y estas copas de licor.
What year were you born?
1988.
This hamster mean a lot to you. Given to you by your mama?
Yes, and it was given to my mother by her mother.
Let me see what the shells have to say.
Miss Mina?
The wires.
Wires? I can't hear you. What?
Tap the wires.
What?
Tap the wires. The water won't stop rising until you tap the wires.
The art world needs to get shaken up a little bit.
It's time for us to just be an agitator.
We don't know what we're doing, and we don't care.
We didn't want rules.
Not only is this crazy, but it's possible.
This is the new art.
It's incredible. Meow Wolf have done something truly unique.